It's 2026, so it's time to rank all 50 movies that I saw in 2025. Now, 2025 was kind of an interesting year for movies for me because, unlike last year where I liked the majority of the films that were widely well received, this year there were a lot of films that were extremely high received that I just didn't really jive with. So, this should make for an interesting list, but let's get straight into it. Starting off in last place, a movie that came out in December. We have, and it's a movie that I honestly didn't think was going to get topped as the worst movie of the year by the one that's right on top of it, and that is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Now, as someone who isn't really familiar with the lore, the games, or anything like that, I didn't get any of the references, so I understand why some people would enjoy this film because, fan service and all that. I enjoyed the Super Mario Brothers movie. Now, I do think that's a much better made movie, but I enjoyed that movie even though I knew that that movie was kind of not exactly the deepest plot wise or anything like that. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, on the other hand, I thought was abysmal in terms of writing. Um, I didn't enjoy any of the characters. I thought they were all pretty obnoxious and underdeveloped. There was this weird, like, teacher guy, too, that was just a jerk for no reason. The story just felt like it was going nowhere. It was just a bunch of random kind of stuff happening. And it's setting up a bunch of stuff that, like, I'm just not excited to see. I also really didn't like the designs of the animatronics. I thought that they were kind of goofy and silly, and I just didn't find this movie to be interesting to me at all. I also thought it was really weird that it was rated PG-13 because it got kind of violent and dark for a PG-13 movie. But anyways, Flight Risk. Flight Risk is I had not necessarily high expectations for it, but decent expectations for it considering it's a movie made directed by Mel Gibson, but when I watched it, I just thought it was a snooze fest. Like it felt like the whole plot is that Mark Wahlberg is like this pilot, but he's actually a bad guy, and so these two people are essentially stuck with him as their pilot. And then they deal with him really quickly, and he's just like asleep in the back for like the majority of the movie. And the majority of the movie just feels like they're flying and like nothing at all is happening. It's a movie that like just there's really not much to talk about. Like because nothing happens in the movie. I literally only other thing I remember about this movie is the CGI deer that was like absolutely awful looking. Yeah, it was not a good movie at all. Coming up next, this might be slightly of a hot take. Another movie that starts with F. It's kind of funny the bottom three movies all start with F, but Freakier Friday. Now I watched Freaky Friday, the one with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis for the first time earlier this year, and I enjoyed it quite a bit to be honest. But this one I thought was pretty awful. Um, it just tries to juggle way too much. I thought with four different characters like swapping bodies, and I just couldn't get into the plot at all. Um, it, it wasn't even like it was nostalgia baiting, but like not in a good way either. Um, so it just wasn't a movie that I was into at all. Next up is, and this is kind of another one of the hot take, but it's just a movie that wasn't made for me at all, and it's kind of a similar situation to Friday Nights at Freddy's, but I do think this is a better made movie, and that is Dogman. Dogman. I took my little cousin to see because he's a big fan of the books, and I got nothing out of this other than a few movie references, I think, to Die Hard and Aliens. I can't really recall much about this movie. I just remember it not feeling like there was much of a story at all. It just kind of felt like a bunch of random events happening. Next up, we have Wolfman, which was a January release. Um, this movie I thought was pretty interesting, and I was like, why is this movie getting such bad reviews for like the first, I don't even know, for the first act, I would say. And then once like the whole wolf transformation starts, it goes off the rails completely. Like it felt really goofy, and I couldn't take any of it seriously. Um, I never felt like the family was in danger at all. It just felt like really over the top and ridiculous. And then another movie, The Amateur. Um, this has, let's see, what's his name? Rami Malek in it, and it was like a drama thriller that I was really excited to see. My dad was really excited to see. He's probably the main reason I went to watch it. My dad moderately enjoyed it. I thought it was really boring. There just wasn't much for me to really care about. I'm not a fan of revenge movies, to be honest. They just always kind of, I don't know, irk me the wrong way, and you'll see that a little bit later on. But I just, yeah, there wasn't much to note about it. It was just very forgettable. And then next up is Batman Clash of Empires. This was a straight to video Batman spin-off, whatever you want to call it, animated movie. And it's not one of the good ones. Um, I just thought it was, I don't know, not the concept I would have chosen for an animated Batman movie. I thought Batman Ninja was great. That I love that movie, especially even the second one too. But like this one, I didn't think was interesting enough of a concept to make for a good movie, so it kind of just felt the same way about the movie itself. And adding on to that, it is a story that like feels way too big for. I think it was like exactly an hour and a half. Trying to tell like this big epic story in the course of an hour and a half, and obviously you see how that goes. Karate Kid Legends. Karate Kid Legends was a big disappointment, especially after it was really good trailers. I have been a lifelong Karate Kid fan. Not like a huge fan, but I have a ton of nostalgia for mainly the first two movies. And I watched Cobra Kai before this movie came out, kind of in preparation, kind of not. I just wanted to check the show out. And I was severely disappointed by this movie. It didn't feel like a Karate Kid movie until the third act. Like all I remember about it was this like whole subplot, or should have been subplot, but it was like really the main plot of like this pizza restaurant owner and his like boxing career. It just felt so random. Like, how did this get improved in the writing room? And how is this an interesting idea for a movie? It was just kind of ridiculous to me, to be honest. Another one that is kind of a hot take, but kind of not at the same time. Some people will completely get this one. Some people will be like, oh, you just didn't understand the sports references. But next up, I have Happy Gilmore 2, which I thought was just. It was another one of this kind of like Freaky Friday where I watched the first one for the first time this year and really, really dug it. And the second one was just, it was bad. It just felt like they were throwing in every celebrity they could into this film. And like, they make a decision at the beginning of the movie, they kill off a character, and then they just kind of make Adam Sandler like this deadbeat dad, like loser. It just it's one of those stories that like I just don't care for anymore. It's been done too many times. We've seen it with Indiana Jones, we've seen it with Luke Skywalker, we've seen it with Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's just like I don't really care to see those kind of stories anymore. They're not interesting to me. I don't find them compelling because they're all the same. Another one that okay, this is probably either the hottest or second hottest take on this video. But next up I have Frankenstein. This was just a movie that like I fully admit was just not on my wavelength at all. It's well made, it's well crafted, but I just felt like the visuals were kind of ugly to be honest, which kind of is the opposite of what I just said, but I don't know. I felt this movie was way too long too. I didn't think Frankenstein was a very you're supposed to feel for him and I just didn't feel for him the entire movie. So it made it hard for me to like really connect with the story, get into it and fully enjoy it to like how much everyone else enjoyed it. So I just yeah. Um Jurassic World Rebirth one of the more disappointing movies of the year easily. Uh, Gareth Edwards was directing it, and the script got approved so quickly that I was like, yeah, this movie is gonna rock. And the concept of it was awesome. Like they go to this island full of dinosaurs meant for the original Jurassic Park, but they were too dangerous for it, so they put them on this island. I thought that was super awesome, and it just turned out to be another generic Jurassic World movie. It, it had this whole like family subplot that was just thrown in there for like no reason at all. It felt like they weren't interesting whatsoever, and I couldn't have cared less about them. And they were like half of the movie. The other half was Scarlett Johansson and what's his name, Mahershala Ali, and I thought their characters were interesting enough, kind of generic characters, but interesting enough. Uh, I forgot the other guy's name, but he was in Wicked. I thought he was a cool character too, but the other half of the story was unfortunately this family that I just couldn't have cared less about. There's one really cool sequence in the movie with that was cut out of the book and the original Jurassic Park book that they put in this movie because they couldn't do it in the Jurassic Park movie since like technology and all that stuff. I thought that was really interesting, but besides that, I just wasn't interested in or into this movie. Okay, oh boy. This is going to be flaming hot take, but one battle after another. I went into this movie with insanely high expectations, and I probably set myself up for that. Um, I'm a big fan of Paul Thomas Anderson, even though I only saw two of his films prior to seeing this. There Will Be Blood, which is in my top 10 of all time, and Punch Drunk Love, which I also love. No pun intended. One Battle After Another was just a movie that had really disgusting messages, I thought. The characters were really terrible, and you couldn't root for them at all. Like, I couldn't root for them, I guess, but you were supposed to. But they're terrorists. They're political terrorists, and no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, it's like, why should I root for these people? And that's how I felt the entire movie, and the movie kind of just dragged because of that. There are also just some really, like, gross and odd decisions that they made. One where they used a gun as, like, a sexual device at the beginning of the movie that just really was off-putting. This was probably the movie that I came ever closest to in my life of walking out of, and I kind of wish I had. I just got nothing out of this movie, and I thought the messaging was just again gross. And the protagonists who are the terrorists, they never learn their lesson at the end, and it kind of almost maybe I was interpreting it wrong, but it felt like it was almost promoting it by the end. Not promoting terrorism, but like promoting the character's lifestyle. Like they just weren't learning anything. Like what they do with the daughter mainly at the end. And yeah, I didn't like this movie. And then next up is the biggest disappointment of the year for me, Tron Ares. I was introduced to both Tron and Tron Legacy by a really good friend of mine this year, and I loved both of them. I thought Tron 1 was such an interesting movie. The CGI is so dated, but that's what makes it interesting, to be honest. And then Tron Legacy is like just spectacle all the way through, and that soundtrack's incredible. Tron Ares I was expecting to be maybe not top Tron Legacy, but be kind of on that same level. And it ended up just feeling like, why do we need this movie? Like, it didn't add anything really to the lore. It didn't go anywhere with any new cool ideas, like the cool ideas that it had to bring it into the real world. It just didn't feel like it went anywhere interesting with that. And I left this movie feeling very like, I left the movie feeling the same way I went walking in. Actually, no, I didn't, because I was excited walking in. So I guess I left the theater feeling worse than I did going in, but whatever. Which I guess is the case with any bad movie. But I also felt like the soundtrack, it was really cool, but it also wasn't used enough, which sounds weird, but yeah. Next up is 28 Years Later. I get why people would like this movie. To me, it felt like it had like two or three, I don't remember exactly, but it had like two or three different stories in like one movie, and I just thought that was really weird. And then adding on to that, it like, the zombies were like not to get into specifics, but like they were nude the entire movie, and it was just like no, just off-putting to me, not for me at all. Um, so yeah, I just wasn't a fan of this movie either. And the ending was so weird too. Like everyone talks about the Power Rangers ending. Yeah, it was weird. Um, and this is like if you look at the ratings and stuff, maybe like this looks like a hot take, but a lot of people seem to be on the same page as me. Maybe not with the same criticisms, but yeah. Last Breath, which is kind of like a movie that no one really talked about. A lot of people who are watching this video, which is probably like five, probably haven't even heard of this movie. It's like a submarine movie. I just thought it's really predictable and forgettable. We're kind of starting to get into the movies that are they're not terrible though. Like they're okay. They're fine. This was just one that like I the plot was just super generic and I just didn't get anything out of it. Warfare. This was made by Alex Garland and I believe like a war veteran to kind of help him like get stuff right and stuff. And I thought that like the depiction of war and all that was fantastic, like absolutely amazing. Like the horrific part of war, it does not glorify war at all and captures it like in the most realistic sense ever. I thought that was done amazingly, but this was just kind of mm, like I'm not really a big fan of movies that are meant to be just experiences and don't really have a story or like character development or anything like that. So I just felt like this movie kind of dragged. I don't really have much to say else like other though, but I don't know. This just wasn't a movie made for me. Then we have Steve, which was a movie with Cillian Murphy that went straight to Netflix. And I thought it was interesting enough, but to be honest, it was like the first half of it was way too chaotic, and then when it started to settle down, it just felt like I was already burned out of the movie. It touched some really heavy stuff, which I thought was done really well, but by like the end of it, I was just already burned out. Cillian Murphy gave a really good performance as well as I don't remember his name, but it's the same guy that I recognized him oddly enough as one of the criminals at the beginning of the Batman. It's that guy, whatever his name is, in the movie. I thought they both gave really fantastic performances, and the messaging of the movie was really good. But just overall, like I don't know, it's not a movie that I'd ever go back to. Black Bag. This was a like crime, not crime movie, but like espionage movie. Um, and I just thought it was way too convoluted. It was well directed, well made. I enjoyed it enough. Like I wasn't bored out of my mind or anything like that, but I felt like it was way too convoluted. It had way too many ideas, and I was having a hard time tracking with it, which could be on me, of course, but yeah, that's just my experience with it. Captain America: Brave New World. Uh, this was a very big disappointment. Um, but I guess I should have expected a mediocre movie anyway because of all the like problems with behind the scenes and all that. This movie notoriously had a ton of reshoots and everything. I thought it was okay. Nothing terrible, but like the most interesting part of this movie was Harrison Ford and the Red Hulk stuff, and that wasn't until the Red Hulk stuff didn't actually happen until the third act. Um, and like it just didn't do anything to make Anthony Mackie's Captain America more interesting. Like I want to like this character because of the implications of like being the first Black Captain America and all that. But like Marvel and the writers just aren't doing anything to make me care for him as much. And bringing Steve Rogers back for Avengers Doomsday, like that doesn't help either. So this was just a movie that like felt I don't know. Like I thought they did a good job. I was expecting kind of I had high expectations, but I was also expecting it to feel a little disjointed because of reshoots, and it honestly didn't feel super disjointed. I mean, there was like one scene. that you could tell was like a reshoot with most of the stuff with Giancarlo Esposito. I think that's how you say his name. But other than that, I thought they did a good job. It was just a movie that's kind of just one of those generic MCU movies. A Minecraft movie. This honestly could have been a lot lower, but I got a kick out of it just because of how ridiculous it was. It is not a good movie. Don't expect pure cinema. The creative choices made for it were really weird. Um, like I'm not really sure why they didn't make this an animated movie like oh, what's that series of video games called? I played them when I was a kid. Like the Minecraft story video games. I just don't understand why they didn't make a movie like that and went in this really weird like making fun of itself kind of direction. I don't know. I just thought it was weird. It also had some really weird like adult jokes for a kids movie, like a movie that kids are gonna want to see. Yeah. Fantastic Four for First Steps. Um, this was up there again with one of the more disappointing movies of the year. I enjoyed like the action set pieces and the set designs and the cinematography. I thought that was all really well done, but I didn't care about any of the characters to be honest because when they meet Galactus, they make this really selfish decision, and it just set the course. And it's like within the first 45 minutes to an hour of the movie, and when they made that decision, I just had a really hard time rooting for them because not to get into like too much detail, but it involves something with their son and saving the rest of the planet, and the decision that they go for. In a sense, it makes sense as a parent to make that decision, but for the movie, it when you're like a superhero, it's like kind of ridiculous and again selfish, and it just made me hard for me to root for the characters. And I also thought the third act was as generic as it could be. I feel like phases 4 and 5. Well, actually, no, this is phase 6, I think. But I feel like the MCU post Endgame has wasted like way too many good villains. Like we've had Modok and Kang, and now Galactus, and I feel like we've wasted like all three of them for very mediocre projects. And like it doesn't seem like we're gonna get any more of either of those three. And I certainly don't want to see any more of Modok, that's for sure. But yeah, just this movie, I wasn't on the same page as everyone else. The How to Train Your Dragon remake, uh, this was kind of on the same page as like the Disney live action remakes for me, which is going to be a super like unpopular take, but the movie just kind of lacked a soul, in my opinion. I wasn't like connecting with any of the characters. I thought Mason Thames did a really good job. I thought the CGI was great and the battles and all that, but it's just another like soulless remake. I feel like of an animated film that it just doesn't need to be remade. It just doesn't. Conjuring Last Rites. This is probably unfair for me to like talk about simply because I've only seen the first film, like before this. But I actually followed along with this movie well enough. It was just I feel too long, and the scares were. I have a problem with horror movies where I just don't get. Maybe it's like, not to get personal, but maybe it's like my medicine or something. But I just don't get scared of horror movies at all. And like this was definitely one of those movies where I felt I was keeping myself from chuckling more than I was like actually tense in my seat. This movie relied really heavily on jump scares, and then the whole stuff with the mirror at the end I thought was ridiculous. But it does have some good elements, like the whole family drama aspect of it I thought was really interesting. So it's just kind of weird because the stuff I was really into was like the stuff I didn't go to the movie for, like the family drama, and the horror stuff didn't deliver. So yeah, it was just a weird experience. Then we have the Naked Gun remake. Another one of those movies where like watched all the other ones for the first time, and I really enjoyed those, except the third one. I thought the third one was just kind of okay, and this kind of fell on the same lines. I thought Liam Neeson did a great job, but I feel like after the first half, the comedy kind of got redundant a little bit, and like I was just kind of burnt out despite it being like 80 minutes long. Like there are some hilarious parts in this movie. I think there was something with like a snowman. And Liam Neeson did a great job of living up to Leslie Nielsen. I just thought that the movie could have gotten a little bit more inventive in the second half. It just kind of got started to feel a little bit repetitive, which I didn't feel with the first two Naked Gun movies at all. And then we have Highest to Lowest, which is the first and only Spike Lee movie I have seen, which I need to fix. But I thought it was poorly written, but really well directed, if that makes any sense. I thought Denzel Washington's character made some really odd decisions, um, but I was into it enough, probably simply because of Spike Lee's direction. I thought the score was really good too. It was just kind of, I don't know, like the writing felt all over the place. It's hard to explain, and I honestly don't remember too much about it, but yeah. Another one of the bigger disappointments of the year, F1, which is going to be another hot take. The racing scene's fantastic, but I went into this movie expecting Top Gun Maverick, and I did not get Top Gun Maverick because it's the same director, and I expected Top Gun Maverick with cars, and it just the story was about as generic and predictable as it can get. It does have awesome races, like I said, going for it. So it's not like boring or anything, but the story was like you could predict every plot beat in this movie. If you told someone like this movie is predictable, like try to predict everything that happens, you could predict like most of the plot beats in this movie. Like it's just a very generic sports movie, but yeah, again, it's not a bad movie. The Running Man, I get like the criticisms of this not feeling like an Edgar Wright movie. I've only seen Shaun of the Dead. Like that's or Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver. Those are the only other two Edgar Wright movies I've seen. Shaun of the Dead, which is like more heavy in his style. I really wasn't a fan of. The British humor just wasn't for me. I didn't find it funny. But Baby Driver I absolutely love. And The Running Man I thought was really good until the third act. The third act has one of the biggest drop offs I've ever seen in a movie. Like, it goes from thrilling, action filled, to like just boring, nothing's happening, and then the ending is just so weird. Like, it turns into completely a movie entirely. Like, it goes from, I guess I can't spoil it, but it goes from like something kind of like he's doing this for his family, and then it goes into something completely different at the third act, and mainly the climax. It just felt so random and odd. I don't know if that's like accurate to the source material or not, but if it was, it should have been fixed. Um, Another movie that came out in December this year. Another movie that people who are watching this video are either gonna really get or really not get, and that's Avatar: Fire and Ash. This movie to me, this is the last movie that like I'm mixed on. So from further on here, it's gonna be all movies that I enjoyed like for the vast majority of it. But yeah, James Cameron delivered spectacle, great CGI, and like the 3 hours and 18 minutes or whatever, it went by relatively fast. I watched this in 3D. It was amazing to look at and everything. Sounded great. But like the best parts of it weren't in the movie enough, like the deep character moments, and then the stuff with the Ash people, like they just felt completely ignored in the movie like by the second half. It felt so random too, like I probably said random like way too many times in this video, but like it just felt like they were not even in the movie until the third act and the climax. Or like you couldn't feel like their presence, I guess you could say. But the biggest criticism I have of Avatar Fire and Ash is that it just feels like Way of Water again, but with different like it's like you copy and paste. It's like you not saying I've done this before, but it's like you ask ChatGPT to write something and then you copy and paste it and then just change up just a few tiny little details. That's what Fire and Ash felt like me, and I felt like it was just copying Way of Water and changing up a few tiny little details. So I mean, it was a disappointing way to end the trilogy because it doesn't seem to be doing amazing right now at the box office. Maybe that'll change, but um, if this is the last Avatar movie, it did end kind of on a whimper. And then now we get into the positive stuff. We have Thunderbolts first. Um, this was the best MCU movie of the year, I felt. And it was a pretty weak year for MCU movies. This was the only one that I would say I was positive on. But I really like the themes of and the messages of like mental health and all that. It did kind of feel like a bit of a generic MCU movie, but I again really enjoyed like the messages, and that's kind of what kept me into it. And it was a lot more serious and dark than the other two MCU movies we got this year, which I appreciate. It's just kind of more my style. You'll see how I'm more of a DC guy, like in future uploads on the channel and later on this video, with a movie that I haven't even talked about yet and won't talk about for a little bit. Zootopia 2. Uh, I rewatched Zootopia earlier this year. Well, and when I say earlier this year, like a month ago, absolutely loved it. Like I was not expecting it to hold up as well as it did for me. And Zootopia 2, I felt like had a lot of the charm of the first one, but at the same time it was lacking like substance. Like the story just kind of felt too, I don't even know how to put it, like too small. Because it wasn't small. Like it wasn't a small scale story, but the story did feel kind of too generic and not, I guess, grand enough for like a sequel. I think I described in my website review and letterbox review that it kind of felt like it was written for a Disney Plus show, and that's just kind of the way I felt. But I mean, it was a very enjoyable movie. It had better humor than the first one, I thought, but it was also missing the more serious tone, which I really liked too, which is kind of a personal thing, but yeah. Next up, we have Black Phone 2, which I was a little bit late to the party on. I didn't watch this until earlier this month. I missed it in theaters. I actually like the first Black Phone quite a bit. I'm not like as high on a lot of people are, but I thought it was a really good movie. And Black Phone 2 is just about on the same page. Different day you ask me, I'd say I prefer one or the other. This kind of takes like a Nightmare on Elm Street approach, but the messages of it were really good. As a Christian, I thought that Scott Derrickson, as a Christian himself, he said that in interviews and all that. I thought he incorporated the Christian themes into this movie amazingly well. There were just some really sweet and heartfelt moments too at the end. It's just a movie that, like, I feel like we need more movies, especially horror movies like this, that are have like really deep characters and as a Christian, like Christian messages and all that kind of stuff. Final Destination Bloodlines. This was a franchise that I've only seen the first movie and I didn't really like it, but I really enjoyed Final Destination Bloodlines. There's not a whole lot I remember about it, but I do remember like I liked how the movie was kind of tame with like the death. Like the concept of the Final Destination movies is so clever and interesting of like death kind of being the villain. And I thought it played it really well in this movie because death wasn't just like killing people left and right like it was in the first movie. It was kind of more, it was built up better, and I don't know, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. Then we had the Phoenician Scheme from Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson, I've watched, I'd say probably a little bit over half of his movies, and he's very, very hit or miss for me, like he is for a lot of people. And it's weird because he seems to have the same style in every movie, so I like should feel the same way about most of his movies, but I just for some reason don't. This was a movie that like I really did like the style of it, but I can't tell you anything about the plot. It was just a movie that was definitely very much one of his movies that was style over substance, but for whatever reason I enjoyed it. Then we have Elio, which is Pixar's newest movie. Um, Not like it doesn't live up to like their older movies. I've been rewatching some of their older movies recently, but it's a sweet little story about like a boy who just wants to go to like has space dreams and all that kind of stuff, but or like believes in aliens and all that kind of stuff. And I thought the animation was absolutely incredible. It's definitely a very kiddie movie though, so I wasn't like I didn't love the movie because of that, but it was enjoyable enough. Tornado, which was like an indie movie that came out this year. Uh, Another movie that is kind of one of those movies that I really enjoyed for the style of it. Um, I think there was some pretty cool like sword stuff in this movie, but it's also just another movie that I don't remember a whole lot about. Um, it was very good though for an indie film. Like you could certainly tell it was an indie film, but it was directed pretty well, and it had I forget his name, but it was the guy from I think Shogun in it. So it had that going for it, obviously. But it was a movie I enjoyed. I think it was one of the only new releases that I watched on the treadmill, so that's probably why I don't remember a whole lot about it. Um, then we have Novocaine, which was I think the 10th movie, 2025 movie that I logged on Letterboxd this year, and the first one that I gave a positive review, which is really sad. I think this came out in March, and I had a blast with it, to be honest. It's not like a great movie, but the concept of this guy who can't feel pain, and he's like an action hero, kind of, because of that, like becomes an action hero because of that. I thought it was really interesting. There's a plot twist in it that was like didn't really need that, but other than that, like I really enjoyed this film. Thought Jacob, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not gonna say it, but the guy from like the Spider-Man trilogy, the MCU Spider-Man trilogy, I thought that like his character was funny in it, and this was just a movie that like I was laughing throughout the entire movie, and the action was really good for what it was. The best thing in this movie is um, this isn't really like too deep into spoilers, but if you don't want to hear any spoilers, I'll just skip ahead. But there's like a scene where he's like having to pretend to be in pain, like while he's being tormented or whatever, tortured or whatever. And I thought that scene was just absolutely hilarious. Probably the hardest I've laughed in the movie this year. Another straight to Netflix release, man. Netflix kind of their movies weren't terrible this year, but because a lot of Netflix movies would be like at the bottom of this list. But we have Havoc, which has Tom Hardy in it, and I thought it was a really fun action movie. It's the same guy that directed The Raid, and I thought that was a cool movie too. Kind of one of those movies that's just a bit like glorifies violence. The Raid does, but I thought it was really well done with the action choreography and everything. I actually watched The Raid because of after seeing Havoc, because I thought that Havoc had such good action in it that I was really interested to check out the director's other work. I can't remember his name, but I think it's Gareth Evans. Now I think about it. But I really enjoyed this film. Uh, I think this was another one where the third act was kind of like underwhelming a little bit. But for a straight to Netflix movie, I thought it was really well done. I think I heard that this movie also got like delayed severely too. So, but honestly, like I thought it was pretty decent. Ballerina, the John Wick spinoff, it came out like in May or June. Um, it kind of follows the same beats, like action wise, as John Wick movies. But I thought that the character that I'm probably botching the name, but Ana de Armas or however you say her name, I thought I completely butchered it. You can roast me in the comments. Can't even talk anymore. But I thought her character was pretty cool. I just didn't think the only reason it's not higher is I didn't think John Wick needed to be in this movie. They kind of forced him in, and this was another movie that I heard that they did reshoots, mainly with the action people, which I thought obviously benefited the movie probably, but you could tell that they probably added in John Wick last minute because of that. And I didn't find that his inclusion was really necessary, but other than that, it was a really solid action movie. And then we have Weapons. Um, Really trippy horror movie that was kind of goofy. Like it balanced the humor and the horror, I thought, really, really well. But it also had some themes and stuff that I didn't love, just because of my morals and stuff. But it was a really well made horror movie. Just kind of one of those movies that's completely wacky too. Kind of throws you off in the best ways possible. But again, a really well made horror movie. This was also one that I was late to the party on. I didn't watch until like probably 2 months, 3 months maybe even after it came out. But I thought it was really well done. And I'm excited to see what Zach Krager does with the Resident Evil movie next year. I haven't seen any of the other ones, but I've heard they're not very accurate to the games. So I'm hoping that it is somewhat accurate to the games. Because I haven't played the games, but like I know their kind of style and stuff. So I'm just excited to see that in a movie. Uh, Movie that a lot of people probably have in their top three, Sinners. I was completely hooked with this movie. The cinematography and the kind of just atmosphere of the movie. Up until the vampire stuff, I thought it was incredible. Um, Ryan Coogler's just an amazing director. I can't wait to see what he does next, which I believe is Black Panther 3, which kind of disappoints me. I like the Black Panther movies, but they're not like incredible to me. But he's an amazing director, and I mean, Sinners was just like perfect showcase of his directing. Um, this was a movie that I saw it in just a digital theater, and I wish I had seen it in IMAX because it's definitely one that was worth seeing in IMAX. But the reason I don't rate it higher is because I feel like when it went into the actual horror and vampire stuff, similar situation to Conjuring, I kind of just got like not into it. Like it just kind of went a little bit ridiculous, and like I was just into the vibes and the atmosphere of the movie. And once it actually started to like kick in and get like crazy, it lost me just a little bit, but not enough to like make me like negative on the movie at all. And then now we enter the top 10. And these are all movies that I'm like a very, very positive on, and I don't really have much negative to say at all about them. This was one that was a really pleasant surprise because I'd heard kind of mixed positive things about it, but that's The Smashing Machine with Dwayne Johnson. I thought his performance was just incredible in this movie. Like I was enamored to the screen because of his performance. The story was really interesting too. Mark Kerr, I think is his name. I thought his whole life was really interesting. The makeup for The Rock was incredible. Now, like when he shaves his hair at the end, I thought like he just looked like The Rock again, even though he still had makeup on. So maybe it was just the hair that was kind of making him look different, but they really made him look completely different. And like there's also another movie that had really good themes and messages and stuff about obsession, healing, addiction, addiction being like the main one of this movie. And I just thought it was really done really, really well. Um, the ending was also like kind of even though it's inspired by real events, it's kind of one of those things where like real events are almost more interesting than like fictional events or fictional stories. Um, where the ending kind of went like in Rocky mode. Like it's not like the same ending, but it's not the ending you'd expect for a sports movie. So I just really appreciated that. And then we have Wake Up Dead Man, which I didn't see in theaters because I didn't play it like anywhere close to me. But I thought this was definitely the best of the Knives Out trilogy. I'm not a very big Knives Out fan to be honest. I think the first one's solid, but every time I rewatch it, I like it less. And maybe that's just a mystery movie thing, but once I know everything, there's just not a whole lot of substance to the film, to be completely honest. And then Glass Onion, I'm not even going to talk about because I really don't like that movie. But Wake Up Dead Man, I thought was, again, the best one. I thought, like, I was a little bit worried going in as a Christian that I was going to, like, the themes of faith and religion and all that were going to be a little bit off putting, like, how they were handled. But I think Ryan Johnson, I believe he's an atheist. I thought he did those themes pretty well. Like, you don't, most of the Catholics are the suspects, so you definitely don't root for them, but it doesn't like paint religion in a bad way. And this is the most like hard to predict Knives Out movie, I would say. Like the other two, I wouldn't say I was completely blown away by, especially Glass Onion. But this movie was like I was like I have no idea where this is going, but it didn't feel like it felt like it was earning that feeling. Like the writing. It didn't feel like the writing was just confusing because let's just make it like ultra confusing. It felt earned, if that makes any sense. And then we had Predator Badlands, which was a really cool theater experience. Um, it's not like the type of Predator movie I want to see anymore. This is just kind of like I want to see this one time and that's it. But I thought the action in this movie was epic. And the concept of rooting for a predator instead of against him or them is like really interesting for sure. Dan Trachtenberg, I think, is really proving himself with three movies so far. One of them being a straight to video one, but one that was really good, which I'll talk about very soon. Kind of just spoiled that, but I thought this movie was really interesting. Interesting is probably a word I've said way too many times in this video, but I'm getting little bit tired. I didn't like the Disney humor, like a lot of people said. Like I felt that in theater too. Like when this movie was more serious and epic, I just was into it a lot more. And I wasn't a huge fan of Elle Fanning's android character, to be honest, which might be a hot take. I'm not sure. And I also didn't like the little creature either. I think that if the Predator was by himself the entire movie, that would have made a better movie. But other than that, this was a pretty awesome movie, to be honest. And then we have The Accountant 2. Um, I watched The Accountant for the first time, I believe, in January this year. Or not this year, last year. Um, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like anything amazing. But this was like one of the more surprising movies of the year for me because I loved it way more than the first one. I thought the humor in it was great. The chemistry between John Bernthal and Ben Affleck was just off the charts, and like Ben Affleck's character obviously has autism, but they use the autism to make for some really good humor without making fun of autism. Like he's just a really like it's a great performance from Ben Affleck first off, and just the humor that they use for that is great but not off-putting. And the banter between John Bernthal and Ben Affleck as brothers like felt so realistic. It was like kind of crazy. Heard a lot of complaints that people didn't think that this movie had enough action. Like I honestly just didn't care because I was so into the like chemistry between John Bernthal and Ben Affleck that I just didn't care. Um, and the next up, a movie I just talked about, kind of Predator Killer of Killers. Very surprising movie. Um, the the plane guy. Not sure what he was doing in this movie, but other than that, this movie was just way better than it had any right to be. Like I really like the samurai storyline and the plane storyline, to be honest. Even though like I didn't know what the plane guy was doing in this movie, kind of felt like why is this guy in this movie can't really compete with the other three, but uh, or, no, it was the other two, I think. But I thought the animation was really cool in this movie, and the samurai storyline was just awesome. Now, there's kind of a not negative, but thing that comes with that where like I'm huge into like Japanese like history and all that kind of stuff, and like especially like the samurai era and all that. And like even before this movie came out, I always thought it'd be cool to have a Predator movie set like in like the samurai era. And I'm kind of hoping that this movie doesn't like waste that opportunity. Chance like we can still kind of get that sometime in the very distant future, probably. But for what they did here, I thought it was done really well. Movie that was way too long but still really good. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I am not like the biggest Mission Impossible fan, but I feel like this closed out the series. If like I'm pretty sure this is the last one, but I feel like it closed out the series really well. This Funny enough, the airplane sequence in this movie was not my favorite one. Like the one that blew me away the most. The one that I was most blown away by and immersed in, and I saw this in IMAX, was the submarine, or not specifically submarine, but the whole underwater sequence. Like that was just like, how in the world did they do that? Like I know this movie had an absolutely ridiculous budget, probably way too expensive, but I was blown away by that. Like the whole underwater sequence, which was really long, but like super entertaining. It was probably probably my favorite. Like each Mission Impossible movie has kind of like that at least one iconic sequence in it, and this one had two, which was the underwater thing and the plane thing. And I thought the underwater sequence was probably might be my favorite in the entire series, which is not a popular opinion probably, but I just thought it was incredible. Um, Now by the third act, I was a little bit like burned out just because of how long it was, but it the way it closed out the series, I thought it was worth it. And then we have Batman Ninja versus Yakuza League coming in number four. Another very pleasant surprise, straight to video movie. This is the last one on the list, by the way. We only have three movies left after this, but this was like everything I wanted from a sequel. Like these movies on paper are not very good. The writing is a little bit ridiculous, and that certainly translates into the movie. But I feel like the ridiculousness of these movies is just makes them so unbelievably entertaining. It's not even funny. Like I was so into this movie. I just got into anime like this year. Like I just got into anime this year, and like this movie just hooked me. To be honest, I watched the first one for the first time this year. I like that one a little bit more, but this one I felt like continued that like really well. I especially really liked just all the Justice League stuff, or the Yakuza League, I guess as they're called. At number three, we have Materialists. Um, the director of this movie, Sea Lion Song. I watched Past Lives for the first time this year and absolutely love that. That's certainly a better movie than this one, but I thought Materialists was a very good movie. Um, I thought the direction was off the charts. Like it really felt. I think I wrote this in my review, but if I didn't, it felt like you were like living on the streets of New York City. It was really weird. Like it felt so realistic, but still like like it felt super realistic, but still cinematic at the same time. And I'm not even sure how she did that, to be honest. But anyway, I've never seen like a love triangle movie, and I know some of them can kind of be like a little bit have some sexual immorality, but I didn't feel like this movie had that at all. Um, and to be honest, the two guys that she could have ended up with in this movie, like I was rooting for either of them. Like they're both very likable, which like you'd think would make for kind of a boring movie, but it didn't. I thought Chris Evans gave a fantastic performance. So did Pedro Pascal. I thought the main lead in this movie, I forget her name. I thought her performance was fine. It got criticized a little bit too much, I thought, but I thought it was fine. Her character was kind of funny enough as the main, even though it was the main character, she wasn't like super interesting. But it didn't really matter because the story was really good and like the whole dynamic with the two other guys was really interesting. So, but the last two movies are the two movies that like from now on in the future, like when I think about 2025, I'll think about these two movies. Um, and number two is Superman. Uh, Words cannot describe the excitement I went in for this movie. It was like on the same level as when I was a little kid and saw The Force Awakens. My story of seeing this movie was kind of funny because like I was planning to see this on Thursday that it came out, but literally the Tuesday, the day of, when I saw that you could like if you had Amazon Prime, you could go see it early. I took that shot and Like it was like 3 hours before the showtime when I figured it out, and I bought that ticket like right away. Went and saw it 2 days early. That's the only early screening I've ever been to, and I loved everything about this movie. I may or may not have seen this movie 6 times in theaters. I have an excuse though. I was kind of experimenting with trying to find funny, not to get personal, but like a girlfriend earlier in college, and 2 times it was doing that like a date kind of. One time it was when I met my roommate. One time it was the early screening. One time it was like the actual opening night with a few friends that were huge DC Comics fans, and I think the other time was it was the last time it was playing in 3D, and I wanted to see it in 3D because I didn't see it in 3D before that. So I guess I have excuses, kind of, but uh, this movie like started off the DCU in like the best way possible, in my opinion. Uh, it's gotten me so excited to see the future of the DCU. Well, I can't even describe it. Um, I've grown to become much more of a DC fan than a Marvel fan, to be honest. Not like, and even in the realm of movies, but I feel like the characters and just like the more fantastic world when compared to Marvel, which is supposed to be more like kind of set in our reality. I feel like that's just a lot more interesting. More epic heroes too, but aside from that, like I thought Superman was great. Like David Corn Sweat gave a fantastic performance, and I think he's easily the best Superman since Christopher Reeve. Uh, which Superman 1978 is like my third favorite movie of all time, by the way. So he had a lot to live up to, but I thought he delivered. Um, I was worried with it being a James Gunn movie because he's done this in the past with even some of his good movies of kind of not balancing humor and seriousness well, and I thought he did a really good job in this movie. But yeah, like Superman was everything I wanted it to be. Um, yeah. And coming in at number one is The Long Walk, which is probably not a very popular take, but for me, this was the movie that I emotionally resonated with the most. Not like I have any experience with this, but the characters and the conversations that they had and the relationships that they built with each other throughout this movie made for such a beautiful, like, experience, but a very tragic one because inevitably, like, if you don't know the premise of this film, it's like, uh, I believe 50 kids can, like, go to this competition where they have to walk, like, a certain pace, and if they go below that pace, they get, like, 3 warnings, and after 3 warnings, they're killed. Um, and it ends when there's one person left. So, like, you know this is going to be a tragedy movie, or a tragic movie. Um, but that adds like this sense of dread through it, and it makes for one of the most intriguing movies that I've seen. To be honest with you, call it recency bias, but this is like already in my top 20 of all time. Uh, I connected with this movie just so much, like especially Philip Senior Hoffman's son, and then the guy from Alien Romulus. Their performances were incredible, but even the other side characters like it gets you to care so much about them, even though like there's one that's supposed to be obnoxious. Like you even end up caring about him. It's just insane. And then like every time a character dies, you feel the weight of it. Like you feel like you're almost there with the characters, and because the characters feel the weight of it. Um, like it's so anti-violence and its themes that like I was just it was a movie that not only entertained me like crazy because of how intrigued I was by the story, which is like crazy because it's just walking. But like the conversations that the people like again, the conversations that people had were just so interesting to me that I was just enamored to the screen. And then Like that mixed with the messaging just made it the most impactful movie of the year for me. And then not to talk about the ending, but like the ending is bleak but unbelievably powerful. And yeah, it may not make you feel good at the end of the movie, but it's a very, I don't know, like the character development for the person that survives is just insane. I'm kind of getting a little bit, uh, I don't know. Like I don't even have much more to say about this movie. It's just if this was the movie that, I mean, obviously it's my number one, but if there's one movie I could recommend it from this year, it'd definitely be The Long Walk, just because of how impactful of an experience I had with it. Like I'd hope other people would have that kind of experience as well. But those were my top 50 movies of the year. Um, if you were watching this video, if you like it, give it a like. If you didn't like it, dislike it. I'm still early on my YouTube channel, so I don't expect this to be a very good video, but I'm trying. Um, yeah, but I will see you in the next video, which should be my Blu-ray collection video.